Uh, we will get started looking today at Philippians chapter 1, verses 20 through verse 26. And we'll be looking at Paul. Now, he'd given his greeting to the people of Philippi. He's shared about his current situation. Now he's talking about his impending execution under the Roman Emperor Nero, and about his life coming to an end soon, and how he looks to his life from his perspective as being in Messiah. In verse 20 we read, It all accords with my earnest expectation and hope that I will have nothing to be ashamed of, but rather now as always the Messiah will be honored by my body, whether it is alive or dead. Paul wrote the Philippians this letter from prison in Rome, where he was awaiting his appearance before the Roman Emperor Nero. As he faces the reality of his execution and impending death, Paul reflects in his life and his great desire that the Messiah will be honored now as he lives, and that his death would also bring honor to Messiah and move forward the message of the good news. So knowing that his death is imminent, that soon he will face the execution under Nero, he's giving a reflection on his life to the people of Philippi, and by us by example. And he says that his great desire is that the Messiah will be honored as he lives, and also as he is soon to die for the Messiah and for the message of the good news. As we saw earlier in Philippians 12 through 14, Paul shares that the believers are receiving strength in their faith, and people are coming to faith because of his imprisonment. And he looked forward to more good for the kingdom coming from his imminent death for the Messiah. So knowing that his death is imminent, Paul is looking to how his impending death, would actually bring glory to the Messiah through his giving his life for his Messiah, as the Messiah gave his life for him. Paul's understanding of the importance of living as well as possibly dying for the honor of God can be seen in the example of Rabbi Akiva, who was a rabbi during the second Jewish revolt around 130 of the Common Era, which we read about in the Talmud in Berachot 61b, who, while being killed by the Romans, understood his death was the way he could finally love God with all his soul. Rabbi Akiva, in his horrible death that he endured under the Romans, under the second Jewish revolt, he saw that his death was a way for him to finally fulfill the words of the Shema about loving God with all your soul, mind, and body. But he saw that in his death he could actually tangibly live out that loving God with all his soul. And Paul also is looking at that even in his impending death, that he'll be able to give honor and glory to the Messiah. Okay, we come now to verse. Sorry for that delay there. I'm trying to. I'm going to do three things at once, so sorry for that. So here we're back to. So Paul is reflecting on his impending death and how it will give honor to the Messiah. In verse 21, he continues, and this is one of my favorite verses from the Scripture, and it's something that I look to model in my own life. And he says in verse 21, For to me, life is the Messiah, and death is gain. Let me read that again. There's a powerful word. For to me, life is the Messiah, and death is the gain. This verse is one of my more familiar verses from Paul's letters, and as I said, it means deeply much to me. Here we can see the heart of Paul and the extent of his transformation, which had begun with his Yeshua encounter on the road to Damascus. On the road to Damascus, that we read about in Acts chapter 9. From that point forward, all of Paul's life centered on the Messiah. All that he did was for and in Yeshua. Living itself for Paul was bound up in Yeshua. After encountering Yeshua, Paul could not conceive of life outside of his service to the Messiah. And he seeks to teach the Philippians this vital truth. To truly live, one must be serving Yeshua. Life itself is living for the Messiah. No longer we're living for ourselves. If we, like Paul, are given to the Messiah, we are living through and for and by the Messiah's life within us. Paul understands that his life was now all about his connection to Yeshua. And serving the Messiah, as he explained in his letter to Galatia, which we read in Galatians 2:20, where Paul says, when the Messiah was executed on the stake as a criminal, I was too, so that my proud ego no longer lives, but the Messiah lives in me. In the life I now live in my body, I live by the same trusting faithfulness that the Son of God had, who loved me and gave himself up for me. Paul's life was living for the Messiah and sharing the life-changing good news about Yeshua with everyone he came in contact. Sharing the good news was not an activity for Paul, but it was his very reason for living. Serving God and serving others was his life work and his very reason for continuing to live. Emphasizing the full nature of Paul's life in Messiah, Charles Spurgeon expanded on this verse when he wrote, for me to live as Messiah, to know Messiah more, to imitate Messiah more, to preach Messiah more, and to enjoy Messiah more, and to die as gain. We see here in these words by Charles Spurgeon, he's expanding on what Paul says in his verse, that everything about Paul's life and everything about our life should be the Messiah and the life that he lives through us, and the life we live because of him. Given the possibility, or more probability of his execution awaiting him after he appeared before Nero, Paul also reflects on what death means to him. Living for Yeshua is his joy and passion. But if he dies, he will gain even more connection to Yeshua by entering into Messiah's presence to experience eternal life in Messiah. Though death could be an escape from the suffering of this life, to Paul, death is not about his desire to end his suffering, but gaining a closer connection to Yeshua. These are powerful things to consider, that he has suffered so much physically, emotionally, spiritually in his time as a servant of the Messiah, that he has been imprisoned multiple times, he has been beaten many times, he's been shipwrecked. His whole life was turned upside down into a life of privilege to a life of suffering by his coming to know the Messiah. But now, with death imminent, a death that could actually end his suffering and give him the entrance into eternal life with the Messiah, Paul understands that there was not, that his desire to be with the Messiah is not a matter of ending his suffering, but of gaining a closer connection to Yeshua. Paul understood that Yeshua was the center and meaning of his life, and his relationship with Yeshua meant suffering, which one day would end with his eternal union with the Messiah. Paul could be confident in his future free of suffering based on the example of Yeshua's suffering and exaltation, as we will see in the Messianic hymn of Philippians 2, that we will look into later this week or early next week. His confidence in the future was substantiated by his knowledge of the past events of Yeshua's life. Paul knew that he would live forever, that death was not the end for him, because he knew that for the Messiah, death was not the one that conquered him. Messiah conquered death. Death was defeated by Yeshua on the Roman stake, on the cross. And he knew because Yeshua lives, he would live also. both now and forever. He was confident in his own eternal life because of the example of Yeshua, the Yeshua who is considered the firstborn of those who be resurrected. But by living on the body, I can do fruitful work that I don't know which to do. This is verse 22. I'll read that again. Verse 22 reads, but if by living on the body I can do fruitful work, then I don't know which to do. Paul knows that his death means immediate union with the Messiah in eternity. He also realized that continuing in the life would allow him to continue to work for the Messiah here on earth, sharing the good news of the Messiah and encouraging the Messianic community. So as we said, knowing all the struggles and difficulties and sufferings of his life, Paul could finally see that the end of his suffering is near, that his execution is impending. He will soon be leaving the suffering of this world and entering into life eternal with the Messiah. But he also realizes that if he were to continue living, even though living in suffering and pain, that he would also be able to continue the work of the Messiah, sharing the good news of the Messiah and encouraging the Messianic community. And we can see this earlier in chapter 1, where he talks about that in his chains, in his imprisonment in Rome, the message of the Messiah was going forward, and people were hearing that Paul, this person who believes in Yeshua, is in Roman prison. He's there because of his faith, trust in Yeshua. So Paul here knows that yes, death would mean his end of suffering, his entering into life eternal, his union with the Messiah in the world to come. But he also knows that it will also mean that he would be leaving this world and leaving the opportunity to share the gospel, the good news of the Messiah with one more person, and encourage the Messianic communities one more time in person. In verse 23 we read, I am caught in a dilemma. My desire is to go off and be with the Messiah. That is better by far. Paul here encounters a dilemma, which we've been looking at, deciding between two outcomes that are equally good. One for himself, death and instantaneous union with Messiah in life eternal, in the new life without pain, without suffering, in the eternal joy with the Lord. And the other good, which would be for the Messianic community, for the people in Philippi and those throughout the Messianic world, if he continued serving the Messiah in his body among the believers. So he sees these two equal goods, one for himself, death, and entering into eternal life, and entering into connection with Messiah, and connection into life without pain and suffering, life eternal. Or that which is good for the Philippians and for the Messianic community, for him to continue living, serving the body of believers, sharing the message of the Messiah, sharing the words of encouragement with the Messianic communities. So Paul here continues this eternal debate, recognizing his death is the better choice because this will end his race and enter the reward of eternal connection with Messiah. But also it would mean he would no longer be able to live in this world sharing the message of the Messiah and encouraging the believers. So he has a great dilemma whether to die and to go be with the Messiah, or to continue living on in this world of suffering, but for the sake of continuing the work of the Messiah in the world. In verse 24 we read, but because of you, the greater need is to stay on in the body. Leaving this world is by far better for Paul, because it means instantaneous connection to life eternal. But he realized that he still could do fruitful work, sharing the good news of the Messiah, encouraging the believers in Rome and throughout the world through his letters, and have given release from prison to return to visit the missing communities of Asia Minor and Macedonia that he had established. Paul is teaching the Philippians an essential lesson and how they can emulate the Messiah by his example of servanthood to him. Paul is demonstrating that the choice of service to others is more important than one's desire, and therefore Paul knows that his decision is made for him to stay and to serve the Messianic community. Paul knows that even with this dilemma, his decision is made for him to stay and to serve the Messianic community. So his desire here is to continue in suffering, but in service to the Messianic community and being a witness for the Messiah to the Roman world. Paul knows that being united with the Messiah is his life's goal. But out of love and commitment to the Philippians, Paul was willing to delay the ultimate prize of faithfulness, life eternal with the Messiah, an end of suffering, by instead modeling the Master, modeling Yeshua, and serving the Philippians and others, and us by example, as long as he can in this life, knowing that eternal life in union with the Messiah awaits him when his work on earth is completed. So Paul here sees that he wants to continue serving the Messiah in this world among the Romans who are yet to know the Messiah, and also to be an encouragement to the Messianic communities, and to be in this world continuing to serve the Messiah, knowing that eventually one day he will meet that death that is awaiting him, and entering into the end of his work on this world and entering into that rest. But he wants to continue working as much as he can for the community and for the Messiah. And he continues on in verse 25. He says, "Yes, I'm convinced of this, so I know I will stay on with you in order to help you progress in the faith and have joy in it." After a short internal debate, Paul comes to his decision to live and continue his work helping Yeshua followers grow in their faith. As a slave of the Messiah and slave of the Messianic community, Paul decides to put the work of his ministry ahead of his desire to leave this world and be united with Messiah in eternity. This decision is a true testimony of his heart to serve fellow and future believers as well as Yeshua. So as I said, he has this short internal debate, but he understood that his role as a slave of the Messiah and a slave of the Messianic community compelled him to, even though he continues suffering in prison and suffering in this physical life that could be ended by his death, that his desire is to continue as much as he can to serve the Messianic community, knowing that when his death comes, he will enter into that rest and enter that life eternal. And to conclude our study today, we'll be looking at verse 26 that concludes this section here of our letter. And in verse 26 we read, "Then, through my being with you again, you will have even greater reason for boasting about the Messiah Yeshua." Paul looks forward to physically returning to Philippi, and presumably other Messianic communities, to personally teach and disciple believers to grow more mature in their Yeshua faith and walk. So as he's decided he wants to continue living on, he's hoping that he will get time. He was hoping that he would get time away from prison. That he was, even if it was a short release from prison, to again visit the people of Philippi and the other Messianic communities. But Paul spoke earlier about how lives were changed by his imprisonment, which we read in verses 12 to 14, were the result of the Yeshua followers being strengthened in their faith through the witness of Paul's life and his willingness to suffer for the Messiah. So Paul is hoping that he can actually leave prison and visit them in person, but he also knows that they can be encouraged in their faith because of his faithfulness to suffer for the Messiah by him being in prison. In this light, Moises Silva, a biblical scholar, rendered the second half of this verse, "So your boasting may abound in Messiah Yeshua through my ministry when I return to you." So Paul, as I said, was hoping that he would actually be released from prison and be able to return to physically be with and to physically encourage the Messianic communities, even though now he is imprisoned, and they're still, even through his imprisonment, are being encouraged by his faithfulness to the Messiah. Paul essentially argues that his return to Philippi would demonstrate God's power, build up their faith, and give them a reason for boasting in God's ability to answer prayer. So as the Philippians have been praying for Paul's release from prison and for him to return to them, Paul is saying here that he hopes that he could actually return to them physically and to share with them about his love for them in person and about the love of the Messiah for them. But as we know, he will actually a few years after this letter is written, face the execution under Rome, under Emperor Nero. So as we conclude today, we've been looking at verses 20 through 26 of Philippians chapter 1, and Rav Shaul, the Apostle Paul's look at his life and his impending execution and his internal debate over whether to enter into life eternal, enter into the end of suffering by his execution and his instantaneous connection to the Messiah in the life to come, or to continue on in this world, a world of suffering, a world of pain, a world of imprisonment, for the sake of being a witness for the Messiah to the Roman world. As he says, he's talking about that throughout the whole palace, the word was going out that there's this Paul who was in prison because of his faith in Yeshua, and also for his continuing work of encouraging the Messianic communities through both his letters and also through the people who visit him, that send messages back and forth with him. So he has this debate to end his suffering and enter into the final reward for his service and his faithfulness, and the faithfulness of Yeshua toward him by drawing him to him, or to continue on in this world. And Paul decides to continue on, and even though death is impending, he wants to continue to serve Yeshua and serve the Messianic community as long as he can in this life, knowing that when his journey comes to an end, that he will enter into life eternal because of the example of the Messiah Yeshua. As Yeshua rose from the dead as the first fruits of the resurrection, Paul knew, and he compels on to us and to the Philippians and all those who read this letter, that because Yeshua rose from the dead, death is not the end for us. We who are servants of the Messiah, who have made Yeshua our life as Paul has made Yeshua his life, that there is life eternal at the end of this life, that we are to continue, in Paul's example, to serve the Messiah all of our lives in this world, and to be a tangible example of his life in this world, a tangible witness to the Messiah. And when we come to the end of life, we will enter into that reward, into the eternal life secured by the atonement of the Messiah. So that will conclude the study for today. As I said, this is the Letter to Philippi live broadcast, which we do Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, 10 p.m. Jerusalem time, and hopefully we'll have some late night people in Jerusalem who will catch the broadcast. And this is as I said, this is an initiative of Letter to Philippi, our new Messianic Jewish theological and biblical studies organization, of which I am the founder and I am the teacher of this study, and we'll be continuing to go through tomorrow, starting with verse 27 of chapter 1. We'll be looking at Philippians 1, 27 through 30 tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific time. And this is, as I said, an initiative of Letter to Philippi. You can find out more at lettertophilippi.org. And you can also find out about our what we're planning for with the organization. You'll find the videos of video and audios of all of our course today. This is now we started last Tuesday, so this is our fifth our fifth class that we've done, and this will be posted later to the day. So all 5 of them will be up there so far, and you can find out about our resources that we have available. We have this teaching that we'll be going through is based on my Messianic commentary on the book of Philippians, which was published by Letterer Press in 2019. And you can get a link there to purchase the book from Letterer Press. The book's also available from Amazon.com. Just search for Sean Emsley or Messianic Commentary on Philippians, and you can purchase the commentary there. And also on our website, you can leave a prayer request. I want to, along with teaching what we have here with the Philippians, I also want to be available to bring your needs to the Lord, as we will see when we get to Philippians chapter 4. Paul makes the important point that in bringing our requests to the Lord, in that we show our dependence on Him, and that in everything we need to bring it to the Lord in prayer. And because that, we show our dependence on God and our dependence on the work that was done through us by the Messiah. And also, as we are in new work, we'd like to ask you that if this is important to you, the work of building a Messianic Jewish theology for the future, we're building on a clear understanding of the Tanakh and the Brit Hadashah from a Messianic Jewish perspective. I also encourage you that on our website to make a donation to the work of Letter to Philippi, and we greatly appreciate that. As we continue this work, we would appreciate your financial and prayer assistance as we continue to bring a message about the Jewish Paul, the Messianic Jewish message of the Scriptures, and to build a strong Messianic Jewish theological foundation for the future, built on what we've been given in the past, and also what insights that are coming anew. And we thank you for watching, and we are just about our 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes for today. So again, thank you for watching. And as I said, if you missed any of these videos, you can just go to lettertophilippi.org and click on our teaching link, and that will give you both videos and audios for all of our classes so far. And as I said, we'll be hopefully starting our first Messianic Jewish book reviews of relative books about the Paul within Judaism, about the issues related to Messianic Jewish theology, and those will be coming soon. They're both on written on the website, and also I'll be doing short video reviews too. That will be hopefully starting this week. So thank you for watching. Again, be with us tomorrow and every day, Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. We are on Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and also streaming live on our website, lettertophilippi.org. And blessings for today, and look forward to having you with us. Again, if you have any questions, you can go to our website, lettertophilippi.org, and fill out our question page. If you have any prayer requests, you can leave those there. And also, if you would like to support this work, you can do that on our donate link. So thank you very much, and we will see you tomorrow. And shalom from Sean Emsley and lettertophilippi.org.